There's a question that lingered in the halls of history, from the marble temples of antiquity to the pages of modern books. It is a question born from looking at a list of Roman gods and hearing a familiar Greek chorus. Jupiter, Neptune, Venus. Their names ring with the power of myth, but their stories sound like tales we've heard before, told by different voices. It is easy to believe that the Romans simply found the Greek gods and gave them new names, that they lifted the Olympians from their mountain and brought them to the 7 hills of Rome, unchanged. But the truth is far more epic than a simple act of borrowing. It's a story of 2 mighty civilizations colliding, of ancient spirits taking on new forms, and of a people so pragmatic they would weave the divine threads of an entire culture into their own to forge a destiny. This is not a story of theft, but of transformation, a journey into how Rome met the gods of Greece, and in doing so, discovered the shape of its own soul. Long before they ever heard the names Zeus or Hera, the early Latins of the Italian peninsula had a rich and complex spiritual world of their own. But if you're expecting dramatic myths of thunderbolts and love affairs, you'd be disappointed. Early Roman religion was less about personality and more about power. It was a practical, solemn relationship with invisible forces they call numina. The numina weren't gods with human forms and flawed personalities. They were abstract, pervasive spirits, the sacred presence within things. There was a numen in a hushed grove of trees, in the boundary of a farmer's field, in the hearth fire that warmed a home, in the stored grain of the pane tree. Worship was a contract, a matter of state and family security. If you performed the correct ritual with absolute precision, you could petition these forces for protection and favor. Get a single word wrong, and you had to start the entire ceremony over. This wasn't about devotion, it was about duty, a concept known as pietas. This world was populated by spirits who would remain central to Roman identity forever. The Lares guarded the crossroads in the household. The Penates watched over the family's storeroom and wealth. Janus, a purely Roman god, presided over all beginnings, endings, and doorways. His 2-faced statue, looking both to the past and the future. And then there was Mars, not the bloodthirsty god of war he would later be associated with, but also a fundamental agricultural deity. He was a god of spring, vegetation, and protecting the land and the people who worked it. He was second only to Jupiter in importance. This was the bedrock, a religion of place, family, ritual, and of unseen forces that demanded respect. There were no statues, no epic poems, just a deep, pervasive sense of the sacred, woven into the very fabric of daily life. So how did we get from these abstract spirits to the dramatic personified gods of Olympus? The answer lies in proximity and pragmatism. For centuries, the Romans shared the Italian peninsula with the sophisticated, flourishing Greek colonies of Greater Greece in the south. Cities like Neapolis and Tarentum were bustling centers of Greek art, philosophy, and religion. As the Romans expanded, they came into increasing contact with these cultures, and what they saw dazzled them. The Greeks had given their gods everything the Roman numina lacked: vivid personalities, beautiful human forms, and a sprawling, interconnected mythology full of drama, heroism, and passion. They saw statues of a powerful king in Zeus, a regal queen in Hera, a wise strategist in Athena. It was an irresistible package. But the Romans, being Romans, their process was systematic, a religious practice known as syncretism. It wasn't a replacement, it was an identification. They looked at their own numina and found what they believed were their Greek equivalents. It was a way of understanding their own gods through a new, more expressive lens. Their own Jupiter, the great sky father and enforcer of oaths, was clearly the same force as Zeus. Their Juno, the spirit of womanhood and childbirth, aligned with Hera. The agricultural protector, Mars, with his martial aspects, shared a domain with the Greek Ares, god of war. Minerva, a goddess of crafts and wisdom, was seen as the virgin of Athena. This process, called interpretatio Romana, was how the Romans made sense of other cultures' gods too, from the Celts to the Egyptians. They believed all peoples worshipped the same fundamental divine forces, just under different names and with different customs. It was an act of cultural confidence, not insecurity. They weren't erasing their own gods, they were enhancing them, giving them stories, forms, and temples. They adopted the Greek myths wholesale, applying them to their own newly personified deities. Venus, once a minor goddess of spring gardens, absorbed the entire identity and mythology of Aphrodite, becoming a goddess of breathtaking beauty and mother of the Roman people. This was an ultimate upgrade. This is where the cheap copy theory completely falls apart, because once the Romans had these newly defined gods, they didn't just leave them as they were. They remodeled them in their own image, imprinting them with core Roman values. The Greek gods were known for their capriciousness, their petulance, their all too human flaws. The Roman virgins were often more serious, more dignified, and more integrated into the fabric of the state. Take Mars and Ares. In Greece, Ares was a figure of panic and bloodlust, often ridiculed and not widely worshipped. In Rome, Mars was a father, the literal father of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. He was a symbol of military power, yes, but also of civic order and agricultural vitality. He was revered, second only to Jupiter. His month, Martius, March, opened the season of both farming and warfare. Jupiter Optimus Maximus, Jupiter the best and greatest, was not just a philandering sky god. He was the ultimate embodiment of the Roman state, its power, and its justice. His great temple on the Capitoline Hill was the center of Roman political and religious life, where Zeus's rule could be challenged. Jupiter's was absolute and synonymous with Rome's destiny. The Roman emphasis on seriousness, dutiful respect, and manly courage transformed their relationships with the divine. The wild, ecstatic worship of Dionysus in Greece became the more controlled, state-sanctioned cult of Bacchus in Rome, before it was eventually suppressed for being too unruly. The Roman Vesta, an ancient guardian of the sacred hearth fire, was so revered that her priestesses, the Vestal Virgins, were among the most powerful and respected figures in the city. A Greek flame spirit had become a central pillar of the Roman state. Even the underworld gods reflect this. The Greek Hades was a somber, often feared ruler of the dead. The Roman Pluto, while still lord of the dead, also took on the name Dis Pater, meaning rich father, associating him with the fertile wealth hidden under the earth. It was a subtle but profound shift in perspective. Two gods perfectly exemplify this complex process of adaptation. First, Saturn, corresponding to the Greek titan Cronus, who was a violent, tyrannical figure who devoured his own children. Saturn's story in Rome was transformed. He was reimagined as a benevolent, wise old king who ruled over a lost golden age of Italy, a time of abundance and peace. His festival, the Saturnalia in December, was a joyous time of role reversal, feasting, and gift-giving, where slaves were served by their masters. This celebration of a utopian past was utterly Roman in spirit. His legacy is etched into our calendar. Saturday and the planet Saturn bear his name, a testament to his importance. Then there is the fascinating case of Apollo. He is the great exception that proves the rule. Unlike almost every other major deity, the Romans didn't syncretize a native god with Apollo. They imported him wholesale from Greece, name and all. But even then, they made him their own. He was adopted as a god of healing and prophecy, and his worship became intensely important to the state. Emperor Augustus famously credited Apollo with his victory at the Battle of Actium and built a magnificent temple in his honor. Furthermore, Apollo's identity merged with other Italian sun gods, like Sol, creating a composite deity. that served Rome's specific needs. He was a direct import, but one that was put to work for the Roman cause. No story better illustrates the final, complete Romanization of Greek myth than Virgil's epic, the Aeneid. Commissioned by Emperor Augustus to create a national epic for Rome, Virgil didn't invent a new myth from scratch. He masterfully rewrote a Greek one. He took Aeneas, a minor Trojan hero from Homer's Iliad and son of the goddess Venus, and made him the protagonist of Rome's founding story. The epic follows Aeneas and his band of Trojan refugees as they flee the burning ruins of Troy, cursed by Juno, who fears his descendants will destroy her favorite city, Carthage, and guided by fate to the shores of Italy. But Aeneas isn't a Greek-style hero like Odysseus, seeking personal glory in a return home. He is the prototype of the Roman hero, defined by his pietas, his duty to his gods, his father, and his destiny. His personal desires are secondary. His heartbreaking abandonment of Queen Dido of Carthage isn't framed as a betrayal, but as a painful necessity to fulfill his fate, to found a new nation that will one day become Rome. The Aeneid is the ultimate statement of purpose. It directly links Rome's origins to the legendary world of Troy and the Greek myths, but it subverts them, arguing that while the Greeks were great destroyers, the Romans were destined to be greater builders, builders of a lasting empire of law, order, and civilization. So, were the Roman gods just Greek copies? The answer is a resounding no. They were the product of a unique cultural alchemy. The Romans began with their own deep spiritual foundation of numina. They encountered the vibrant, personified gods of Greece and saw in them a powerful expression of divine power. Through syncretism, they merged these concepts, grafting Greek mythology onto their own divine framework. But the final crucial step was adaptation. They refined these gods, sanding down their chaotic edges and infusing them with Roman virtue, duty, and statecraft. They weren't interested in mere stories. They were interested in a divine partnership that would secure the fate of their empire. The legacy of this fusion is all around us. Our planets bear Roman names. Our words, like volcanic from Vulcan, martial from Mars, and jovial from Jove, Jupiter, repeat their power. The myths of Hercules, the tales of the Trojan War, and the very archetypes of the gods we know best come to us primarily through the Roman lens. They took the raw, brilliant clay of Greek mythology and sculpted it into the ideological cornerstone of Western civilization. They weren't imitators, they were curators, architects, and innovators. They understood that a god, like an empire, must evolve to survive, and in doing so, they ensured that these ancient deities would live on, not as faded echoes of Greece, but as powerful, distinct, and unforgettable pillars of the Roman world. Watch the next video for more mythical stories, and let us know in the comments below which myth would you like to hear next.